If you walk through the ruins of ancient Athens today, you are surrounded by the ghosts of genius. The Parthenon, the theaters, the stoas, monuments to a civilization that gave us democracy, philosophy, and tragedy. But if you travel south into the rugged, hollow valley of the Eurotas in Laconia, you will find almost nothing. Thucydides, the great historian, predicted this. He wrote that if Sparta were ever deserted, future generations would struggle to believe that it was ever a great power. There are no marble temples to reason here. There are only the silent fields where a military machine once ground human beings into weapons. We are obsessed with the Spartans. From the Renaissance to Hollywood's 300, we have canonized them as the ultimate warriors, the elite. The popular narrative tells us they were a society of superheroes bred for battle who valued freedom above life itself. But this is a lie. The Spartan mirage is perhaps the most successful propaganda campaign in human history. To understand the true horror and tragedy of Sparta, we must strip away the crimson cloak and look at the rotting foundations underneath. We must ask the uncomfortable question, were they actually elite, or were they merely the ancient world's most terrified jailers? To understand Sparta, you must understand the mathematics of fear. Unlike other Greek city-states that colonized across the Mediterranean, Sparta colonized its neighbors. In the 8th century BC, they conquered Messenia and enslaved its entire population. These were the Helots. They were not chattel slaves bought at a market. They were a subjugated nation of fellow Greeks, living on their ancestral land, forced to give half their harvest to their Spartan masters. The ratio was a nightmare. 7 Helots for every 1 Spartan citizen. The entire Spartan lifestyle, the discipline, the cruelty, the austerity, was not a noble pursuit of perfection. It was a desperate, paranoid, counterinsurgency strategy. A Spartan could never learn a trade, never farm, and never travel, because his full-time job was sitting on top of a seething volcano that could erupt at any moment. Every autumn, the Spartan ephors would ritually declare war on the Helots, legally allowing young Spartans to murder them without blood guilt. The Crypteia, their secret police, would stalk the fields at night, assassinating the strongest and bravest slaves to keep the population broken. This was not the behavior of confident elite warriors. It was the behavior of a ruling class paralyzed by the terror of a slave revolt. This terror necessitated the agoge. We romanticize this upbringing as a prestigious military academy, but in reality, it was state-sponsored, institutionalized trauma. At age 7, a boy was ripped from his mother and thrown into a world of calculated deprivation. They were given 1 cloak for the year. They slept on reeds plucked from the river with their bare hands. They were starved to the point of desperation, encouraged to steal food to survive, and then whipped mercilessly, not for stealing, but for getting caught. The goal was not to create a soldier capable of tactical brilliance or individual heroism. The goal was to destroy the individual entirely. The Spartan system required interchangeable parts. In the phalanx, you do not want a thinker, you want a wall. You want a man who fears his officer more than the enemy. The agoge produced men who were emotionally stunted, socially identical, and terrified of shame. When we call them elite, we are confusing skill with obedience. In individual combat, a Spartan was likely no better of a fencer than an Argive or an Athenian, but in a line, shoulder to shoulder, the Spartan would not run. That was their only true superpower, a suicidal refusal to break formation. For 2 centuries, this worked. In the flat, open plains of Greece, where warfare was a formalized shoving match of heavy infantry, the Spartan robot was king. The other Greeks, who were farmers and potters by trade, could not stand against the psychological weight of the Spartan silence. But the crack in the armor was their lack of adaptability. Because their society was frozen in fear of the Helots, they could not change. They produced no military innovations. They were terrible at siege warfare. They had no cavalry to speak of. They were a hammer that saw every problem as a nail. The myth began to unravel during the Peloponnesian War. While Sparta eventually defeated Athens, the victory exposed them to the corrupting influence of the outside world, gold, politics, and naval warfare. But the death blow came from Thebes. Enter Epaminondas, a Theban general who studied the Spartan machine and realized it was predictable. He knew the Spartans always placed their best troops, the king and the elite Hippes, on the right wing of the phalanx. In 381 BC, on the dusty plain of Leuctra, Epaminondas did the unthinkable. He refused to match the Spartan line evenly. Instead, he stacked his left wing into a massive column, 50 shields deep, a battering ram aimed directly at the Spartan king. When the lines collided, the elite Spartan drill could not defy physics. The sheer weight of the Theban column pulverized the Spartan right. King Cleombrotus fell. And then the impossible happened. The Spartans, the men who supposedly never retreated, the men of return with your shield or on it, broke and ran. The spell was broken. The aura of invincibility evaporated in a single afternoon. Following Leuctra, Epaminondas marched into the Peloponnese and did something even more devastating than winning a battle. He freed the Helots. He founded the city of Messene, giving the slaves a capital and a wall. In one stroke, he destroyed the economic engine of the Spartan state. Sparta never recovered. They didn't go out in a blaze of glory, they faded into a pathetic irrelevance. Their birth rates collapsed, a phenomenon known as alientropia. The agoge was so It tells us that a society built on the back of slavery, maintained by terror, and incapable of change is not a society of supermen. It is a fragile glass cannon waiting for the one strike that will shatter it forever. The Spartans were not the masters of war. They were its victims, trapped in a cage of their own making, marching in perfect step toward their own extinction.